Athletes, welcome back. Today we are talking about lunging and all its variations. We're gonna go over the lunge itself, and then we're gonna go into variations of how we can add weight to that with single dumbbells and double dumbbells. So without further ado, I'm gonna pull Nick into the shot, and we are gonna start talking about the basics of our lunge position. Now, if this is something you're not that great at, but you haven't taken the time to practice, now is the time. And Nick is gonna show us what a couple of walking lunge steps looks, no pressure. We're just gonna go through, give us 3 total, Nick. So Nick is gonna step out, touching his back knee to the floor, keeping that chest up. And perfect, go ahead and reset to the back for me, Nick. So what we're gonna do is the first thing is I'm gonna have Nick stand right here, and I want him to go into a lunge position first. So go all the way down into that position. Now, what we're looking for when we take our lunge step is that we want full contact with the floor with this forefoot. What that means is that when Nick steps forward, if he doesn't take a big enough step, he's gonna end up on his toes and that heel's gonna come off the ground. We also talk about knee positioning, because if Nick is in a position where he hasn't taken a big enough step and we move this foot back, so move it back for me, Nick, even more, even more, even more. Now this knee is clearly going past his toes and you see that heel raising up off the floor. We want to take the big enough step so that foot is forward, and then that knee is going to be in a safe position in relatively to the toes. And with this, we're looking at if knees come over the toes slightly, that's okay. But if it's clearly over and pulling that heel up, we are too close and we need to go wider with it. The second thing that we look at with foot positioning here is that Nick takes a slight turn in of his foot when he takes the step. And this takes us back to the basics of our air squat. So if I have Nick go ahead and stand up for me, and I want Nick just to hit an air squat for me, and we're gonna get down into the bottom and we're gonna take a look at where his knees are with his toes. You can see that this knee is going in the same direction as this toe. If Nick comes back up and he steps into that lunge again, a slight turn in of the foot puts this knee in the same position with his toes. If his foot went straight out, so straighten it out for me, this knee starts to dip inside the foot and puts us in a bad position with that knee. And when we start to add weight, it's gonna get even worse. So standing back up, Nick is gonna go back into this step and then he's gonna step out of it. So go ahead and just give me one lunge step and then stand. At the top of each of our lunges, we have to make sure that we hit full extension here. So a common mistake that people will make is that they get into these crouch lunges. So go ahead and step back, Nick, and give us 3 crouch lunges. The crouch lunge is where you don't get full extension, you stay bent over, you don't see those hips opening up all the way and relaxed. Nick does a pretty good job of doing bad reps because those even look pretty good. Stay low for me. Give me a couple more here and just make them look bad. Stay as low as you can as you go into those lunges. That's what we're talking about, and that's what we want to avoid. All right, bring it back, Nick. Now, the next mistake that people can make when they're going through these lunges is doing the stutter step. And sometimes the stutter step is on accident. And if that's the case, acknowledge your mistake, reset yourself. Sometimes it's on purpose because you're trying to cheat the standard. That is not allowed. That just makes you a bad person. So with our stutter step, it's gonna look like this. Nick is gonna take a step, he's gonna come out of the lunge, and he takes these little tiny baby steps at the top, and then he goes into his next one. And Nick, what are you doing? Reset. There's no way that's allowed. So make sure that you are catching yourself. Now, when we are going through these lunge steps, sometimes the stutter step happens because you get off balance and you're trying to stabilize yourself. A quick way to stabilize ourselves through the lunge is thinking about dragging that back foot slightly. Now, I'm not trying to pull the rubber up with my toes as I step, but you're gonna see Nick take 3 more lunge steps, and this back foot is gonna slightly drag along the floor as we come up. So I maintain 2 points of contact with the floor as I'm standing. So go ahead and show us what that foot drag looks like. And going through the next, just like that. And Nick is making sure to demonstrate that. It's gonna be a little bit quicker for you as you go through that, but add that foot drag or that toe drag in there if you find that when you're standing, you're getting on one foot and you feel like you're on a tightrope, because it most definitely will help you. Now, the last 2 points for our lunge that we're thinking about is gonna be our chest and upper body positioning and also our breathing. If you've been with us before, you know that breathing is the #1 thing that I always say is not only gonna make working out easier, but it makes life easier. Because whenever it gets tough, you need to breathe. And it's the same thing in the lunge. So with our lunge, anybody can lunge down. Not everybody can lunge up, because that's where we get stuck. So what Nick is gonna think about doing is that into a braced core, he's got those abs tightened up like he's at the beach. He's gonna take a lunge step. He's gonna take a nice deep breath in and then breathe out on the way out of that lunge. He's gonna do the same thing on the next step. And again, perfect, reset. Now what I want Nick to do is he's gonna try to breathe normally, but use that same timing now. So go ahead and give me the same thing. Make it a little bit more natural to breathing. There we go. And a breathe out. And breathe out, perfect, and reset. With our chest positioning, right now, we want you guys to be practicing with no weight because we want to make sure that you can do this before you add weight to this movement. But if you notice, Nick does a fantastic job of keeping that chest up. If we've got upper front rack mobility that's not the best in the world, sometimes you'll tend to gravitate going down with that chest. So we're gonna have Nick do 2 lunge steps here and focus on keeping that chest nice and tall. We can practice by taking our hands and putting them up on our shoulders if we need to, just like this, and relax. So practice these lunges. Make sure that you've got your foot positioning down. Make sure you have your knee positioning down. We want full contact with the floor and our foot. When we're taking that step out of the lunge, this forefoot or foreleg is the one that's working, and we're driving through that foot as we stand, getting to full extension. That's gonna cover the basics of our lunge. Now what we're gonna do is get into our weighted versions with single and double dumbbells coming up next. All right, athletes, we are starting out with our first weighted variation, and this is gonna be the regular dumbbell lunge. Now, the regular dumbbell lunge has a lot of options that you can do with it. You can do it single, you can do it double, you can do it in a house with a mouse or in a box with a fox. We gotta make sure we got that copyright approval. But when we're getting into our weighted dumbbell lunge, with this, we have multiple carries that we can use. So I'm gonna have Nick go ahead and pick up both dumbbells. So with our dumbbell lunge, we have the option of keeping them by our sides. He's gonna go ahead and give us 2 lunge steps here. The big thing here is making sure that we can keep those by our side. Go ahead and reset for me. We just can't prop the dumbbell on that working leg. So if you think you're being slick by doing one of these, that does not count. You have to completely support it with your arms and no other body parts. Now, one way that you can get a little bit of a pro tip here and make this movement a little bit easier is if you use the momentum of the dumbbells by swinging them slightly. Now, we're not talking about windmilling these dumbbells around in a circle like you're trying to fly off the ground, but Nick is gonna show us what this looks like. He takes a step and allows those dumbbells to swing forward through the lunge and relax, reset, so that he can use the momentum of the dumbbells to help him in moving forward and even stepping up out of the lunge. The next option that we have with these dumbbells is that he can move them to his shoulders. Now with this, we do have a front rack variation coming up, which has a grip standard. This has no grip standard if it's just a dumbbell lunge. So he can take these, rack them on his shoulders just like this. The only rule that we give you here is that hands have to stay in contact with each dumbbell at all times. So Nick cannot drop his hands and try to lunge like this because it does not look safe and we don't want you guys doing that at home. Now, with this, same points of performance as before. He's gonna take his lunge step, full foot contact on the floor, back knee touches the floor, stands up to full extension and goes through. And I'm gonna have Nick stop right there. Now, the way to get these down, we need to make sure that he does lower them to the floor. He can't just dump truck them down. So he's gonna lean forward and receive the dumbbells and then set them on the floor. The next one that we have is, go ahead and take those dumbbells, reset for me. We can do these variations with a single dumbbell as well. So Nick's gonna run through these really quick. Our dumbbell lunge that's just gonna be held by our side, go ahead. He can do the swing through on this one if he likes. And reset for me. And then we're gonna go up to the shoulder. And we can rack on the shoulder and he's gonna go here as well. Notice the whole time he's taking a nice deep breath in, breathing out on the way up, and relax, good. The differences you're gonna see between your single dumbbell variation and your double dumbbell variation is that you're either a single dumbbell person or a double dumbbell person. The single dumbbell is gonna add the challenge of having to use that core stability because you're only weighted on one side. So just like the Titans, you're gonna have a strong side, but you're also gonna have a weak side. So one side is gonna feel a lot more confident than the other. Make sure that you're practicing that weak side because often in workouts or competitions, they do have a requirement that if you did it on your right, you also have to do it on your left and vice versa. So don't bias towards your good side all the time. Now, with this as well, if we go ahead and the single dumbbell, we pick up the double dumbbell, The double dumbbell allows us to be weighted on both sides now. So now the counterbalance is created by the second weight that we have. The only thing about this is that it tends to be heavier. So stronger athletes are gonna bias towards the double dumbbell. Body weight athletes are gonna bias towards the single dumbbell. So go ahead and relax. You can set them both down. This is gonna cover our regular dumbbell lunge. Again, this is something that you're gonna see multiple variations of, and it's less likely to show up in a competition because you are gonna have those standards of holding it on that front rack position or at shoulder level or higher. And we're gonna get into your front rack dumbbell lunges coming up now. Dumbbell lunges are done and we are on to the front rack. Now, the front rack is something that you primarily see in the CrossFit Open or in competitions that come up. And this is a way to standardize the way that the dumbbells are held so that athletes can't gain an advantage over someone else by doing something strange that they may have practiced at home. Our front rack dumbbell lunge simply means that Nick has a grip standard on those dumbbells that we have to keep a full hand on the dumbbell handle at all times. So racking the dumbbells on his shoulders with so put them on your shoulders for me, no handle, yep, like that. That would not be allowed with the front rack. Now, if Nick goes ahead and switches back over to the handles for me, he's gonna take them up. Now, if Nick has the flexibility to take those dumbbells and set them on his shoulders and maintain a full grip, this technically would be allowed as long as standards don't designate otherwise in whatever you're doing. However, more commonly, you're gonna see him support those dumbbells with his arms by tilting them up vertically or tilting them forward horizontally. Go ahead and tilt them forward horizontally, and we'll cover that one first. Go ahead and turn towards me, Nick. You can see in this position that Nick is letting the back head of the dumbbell trail off his shoulders so that he is keeping some balance there. If Nick tried to give me a picture perfect horizontal dumbbell to where we moved it into this position, there is no way that this guy is gonna be able to lunge and his chest not drop forward. We have to make sure we put the weight, and if you notice, we have now balanced this weight over his midfoot, which has the carryover to our weightlifting and bar control as well. What Nick is gonna do here is he's gonna take 2 lunge steps for us. Same points of performance, full foot contact, back knee touches the floor and chest stays up. Go ahead and bring it back. Now the next one that we have is that Nick can move out of this slightly horizontal position and go vertical on his shoulders. So we bring it up to this position. I'm gonna have Nick turn around once again so you guys can see. Now, for male athletes, I always think that female athletes and male athletes can do just the same. I know that we can always accomplish the same thing here. Unfortunately, male athletes sometimes have a little bit of an advantage in this holding position, and it's because of traps. Now, with our traps here, we've got Nick sitting the dumbbells on his traps. With female athletes, if they have smaller traps, there may be less of a platform to position those dumbbells on, especially as the dumbbells get bigger. What you see that Nick has done is he's got 3 points of contact. He's got these positioned on his traps, he's got the dumbbells against each other, and then the dumbbells against the back of his head. If Nick turns around, he's gonna go ahead and give us 2 lunge steps. Same points of performance as before, and reset. Bring it back, flip it around one more time. No, all the way around, there we go, bring it back up. Now, in competition standards, we have seen where you can't let these dumbbells touch each other and they can't touch your head, so they have to be freestanding. This is a more difficult version, and it's because you're having to stabilize these now. Now he's gonna go back into that lunge again, give me 2 steps, and reset, and bring him back, and all the way to the floor. Now with all variations, if you're in the gym and the standards say that you just gotta keep the full hand on the handles, you can go with that tripod of the 3 points of contact. However, we do want you guys practicing the unknown and unknowable. So every once in a while, throw in those freestanding dumbbells so that you know what it feels like to stabilize those and you get practice with them. That's gonna cover our front rack dumbbell lunge. And we got one more variation with our overhead coming up next. And we're already back with our overhead dumbbell lunge variation. Now, as with all of our lunge variations, we can do this with a single and a double dumbbell. We're gonna cover double dumbbell first, and then we're gonna see Nick do a couple single dumbbell reps on this as well. We're gonna take both of these dumbbells, and now Nick has gone from, we started down next to our waist, and now we went to our shoulders, and now we're going overhead. So he's gonna pick both dumbbells, take them up, and we're gonna talk a moment about positioning with the dumbbells. So face me, Nick. You can see that with Nick's hands, he's slid his hands towards the front head, allowing those dumbbells to tip back. What this does is that now the weight is gonna be more centered over his arms so that he can control. If Nick tries to level those out and get them very horizontal, now he runs the risk of any variation of these dumbbells. If it moves forward, it's gonna pull his body there and he has less control than if it's lined up with his arm. So drop it back down into that position. Go ahead and give us 2 overhead dumbbell lunges. And reset, bring it back, bring the dumbbells down. Now with this, there's not a huge difference between what we're doing with our front rack other than where these dumbbells are positioned. And as always, as the load gets away from our center of gravity, it's gonna be harder to control. So with these dumbbells going overhead, we have to make sure we really accentuate that deep breath into a braced core and then breathing out on the lunge. Now with this, Nick can drop it down to 1 dumbbell. So drop 1 dumbbell for me and take the other straight up. And then go ahead and give us 2 lunges on this side, reset, and then we'll do 2 lunges on the other side. And reset for me, bring it back. And then last time, and again, the dumbbell positioning is gonna be the biggest advantage that you have during this. 1 more, and relax, and bring it back, and set it down. Now, make sure that when we are going through, you do need to check standards. Most typical, you will see that there has to be lockout of the arm. So if you're going through those overhead lunges and you got that bent arm right there, you may run the risk of being no rep. So always check beforehand and practice beyond what those standards are so that you know that you're gonna hit it every single time. This covers our overhead dumbbell lunge. And now we have gone through all the progressions. So if you missed one, go back, check out those videos. Thank you so much for joining us.